Welcome to The Goalpost, the podcast where it's all about long-term player development. We're here to talk soccer through a different lens, one that puts the players before the scoreboard and progress before pressure. This is all youth soccer with a purpose. All development, all the time. I'm your host, Jason Glover. All right, so Mike, I'm curious to get your opinion on the soccer landscape, not just maybe what we do with Steamer's Crew, but your opinion overall in the United States, and how does it compare to what you've learned and yourself have even experienced, across in Spain, and having those different conversations with directors of coaches, and then how you bring it back in the United States. So it's kind of a two-part question. It's, what do you see Steamer's Crew, and where would you like for that to go? And then taking some of your experiences from what you've learned over in Spain and other places, and how it's kind of shaped what you already, thought you believed. And then it kind of probably had a little bit of an evolution because of what you learned from other folks.
Yeah, you hit me with the hard stuff now, so hopefully I can get all that together. So I may wind around, but I think, when you first start coaching, I think everybody coaches because either they were a player or they have kids that are playing, and you just sort of get into it. And the ones that start working with the youngest kids are just there because, they're just trying to step up and coach a team and, fill a void. And maybe it's something that they're passionate about. And I think that you learn from there. I think you have other coaches that maybe played at a higher level and are going to be coaching maybe at the level that they played at or the way they experienced the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the challenge for me, or the challenge for anybody, is to find a way to bridge those two together. Because I think that if I look around and sort of, as I talk to different coaches, and I've had experience working at or conversing with or being exposed to different clubs, I think the thing that people will consistently talk about, but yet might be the thing that people are still saying we're missing the mark on, is youth player development. And so when you talk youth player development, and you'll hear Tom Byer talk about this all the time, lots of cultures, and I can mainly speak for the United States, is we try to find a country or a club that seems to be doing it right. We like what we see, and so we want to find out more about it. And then we try to take on what we learn and apply it within our universe.
Right.
And I think what is often missed, and he will speak to this all the time because he is probably as well known a coaching figure as there is in the world from the standpoint of youth player development. And the things that he always talks about remain the same, and that is culture drives everything. So the environment that our kids are raised in, that they grow up in, the environment that they are immersed in, most likely has the greatest effect on their long-term potential. And do kids grow up in a household that watches soccer all the time, that has a team that they, are really passionate about? Do they grow up watching players and idolizing players? And notice that I haven't gotten into anything else other than sort of peripheral things that I think to a lot of people don't sound like much.
Right.
Yet I think when you do it and you step back and you look at it, you realize maybe it's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you say, hey, Steamers, when we talked about that, the first thing that I always say is culture. And when I talk about culture, it's kids that love to play the game of soccer, not kids that are, hey, here's a uniform, there's referees, there's parents on the sideline.
Right.
It's, hey, there's a ball and there's open space and there's kids and it's fun to go play. And so,
Did you see that in Spain a lot?
absolutely. And not only did I see it, kids walking around with soccer balls just as a play toy
Right.
on the beaches, playing all different variety of sports. But it's not just they're playing mini games of soccer, but it's juggling or juggling over a volleyball net, or families like grandparents, parents, kids,
Right.
grandkids, all playing, and it's recreational. It's fun. It's sort of what they do. It's their lifestyle. And
And
then
what do you see here? What's right?
I think that some of the most amazing things about our country, but also some of the challenges, is that the kids can do everything. Like, how many sports, we hear so much, hey, don't specialize. And, so like my kids, your kids, all growing up played. I know Caden did, right? I know Connor
Mhm.
did.
Yeah.
About the girls, I'm not so much sure.
Early,
Okay.
Haley did a stint of softball, and then Lindsay did basketball and volleyball.
So, but, so I live in St. Louis Hills, a neighborhood that is got kids everywhere.
Right.
Kids are walking to each other's house. You got to be careful driving down the road because they're running across the street and they walk to school.
It's very European, actually.
Absolutely. And it's what we were looking for our children, where real play can just happen. But there's also, hey, there's CYC soccer, there's CYC volleyball, there's CYC basketball, there's track, there's baseball. And when these kids are young, especially if they're not growing up in a soccer first household, they want to get exposed to all of it. They want to do what their friends are doing. And so when people argue the specialization thing, I don't believe we should be asking the kids to choose something. But there's a difference between doing different sports if we're not paying money and traveling and playing tournaments and doing, sort of this rigid approach to it. It's more about, hey, I'm playing with friends in the backyard. It's kids play every day. But if we commit them to playing travel soccer or travel basketball or something like that, it becomes about the drive to practice, and then the practice, and then the quote unquote commitment. And then we've got to go to games, and then there's tournaments, and then there's money, which is fun.
Yeah.
The kids love it, but it's as much about the social environment, parents being with parents they enjoy hanging out with, kids being with friends. And so their sort of vision or picture of the sport is affected by that, the social aspect of it, but also by the success that they have.
So are we overcomplicating it? Do you think that in youth development, because there's so many options, that you kind of do everything, but you really don't do anything? Because at the end of it, you've played a lot of different sports, but nothing really came out of it other than the intangible parts of being in sports and, being in organized sports. But do we overcomplicate it?
Not intentionally, I don't think. I think it's, I think there's a lot of well-intentioned adults who want to coach kids and want to do the right thing and truly care about them. And a lot of parents who they want to try to, what's the right thing to do for my kid? And I don't want to fall behind. And I want to make sure that I'm giving my son or my daughter the best opportunity. But I would say, and I think you and I have talked about this before, education is so important. It's really difficult to not get caught up in the moments. And I can tell you that CYC sports, they have such a powerful impact. They have the potential to have such a powerful impact on kids. But the reality is, these well-meaning adults ultimately are trying to win a CYC championship. They're trying to win games. And that's what people start to come to believe is successful. And if it's successful, then that must be development. That must be the way to do it. And I think we missed the mark there unintentionally in a lot of cases, but we definitely missed the mark there, because when you're trying to win, when you're focused on results, you try to take the least amount of risk possible.
So how do parents handle the long road of development versus the short term of success? So meaning you're playing to win. Of course, everybody's playing to win, but we use this term pretty regularly, but you don't sacrifice how you win. So a lot of times that is what happens though. You're playing in a championship game, you sit the last two kids, the last 15 minutes. So is it the fear of missing out and not being able to report back to, your work friends that your son or daughter won the latest tournament? So how do we start educating parents to look further down the road? Because in my opinion, they're sacrificing now, like, gotta win for what they might want later on, which is a well-rounded athlete that is playing in a sport, and they're being given opportunities to fail, and it's a supportive environment, and it's not so rigid as win or loss. So what's your thoughts on helping parents navigate through this decision model, which is short-term fear of missing out versus long-term believing in something, and maybe taking the approach of probably what you've seen in Spain, which is generations of families playing the sport?
It's funny, we're doing this podcast in a church, and the word I keep coming up with is faith and trust, because it's hard, especially if you haven't experienced before. Talk to parents whose kids have gone through it. You will find more parents who would maybe re-examine their journey.
Right.
If they knew, before what they know now. And what you have to do, and I think as coaches, as mentors, as educators, we have to try to be transparent in what we believe. The beauty of sports, the beauty of soccer, especially all over the world, is that people do it different ways and there's different styles. But in the end, you have to have a clear vision, and you have to present that vision. And as you and I have talked about, we have to accept that some people may not accept that vision. And it's hard, because when you're passionate about something and somebody doesn't see what you see and what you believe, it's hard. You can't try to convince somebody. And that's what I try to tell people is, look, the players are out there. They want to win. It's the reason why they play. But if I sat down with a parent and I said, in 5 years, in 6 years, what would you like for us to have accomplished with your kid? And I never, ever hear, I hope we won a lot of games. I hope we won a bunch of trophies. What you hear is, man, I hope my kid learns these incredible lessons as being part of a team. I hope they learn how to work hard. I hope that they fall in love with the game, that they develop a passion for something.
And is that the same parent, though, that we catch on the sideline?
100%.
And they're screaming and yelling. And so it's kind of say one thing, do another, not to their fault.
No, that's...
I think it's just natural. And that's the hardest part, is you want to say the right things. Doing the right thing is a little bit more complicated, because it's your child and you don't want them to fail, but yet failure is part of the process.
Essential part.
Yeah. And the hardest part is to watch them fail and do it right in front of you live. And it's frustrating. And I think when you and I first were together 15-ish years ago, one of the things that you mentioned in a group parent meeting was that your child is not your child's performance is not a reflection of you as a parent. And gosh, that really stuck because a lot of times I think parents get insecure or upset with their child because they're not performing like everyone else on the field. But that doesn't mean that it's, right to yell at them. But it's in the moment and it's hard to have that clarity. So, how do we help that parent who says the right thing but does something different?
Continue to try to appropriately reemphasize the point. I think that it's hard for parents to grasp the possibility that the coach could care more about their kids' development than they do because their coach is uniquely capable of understanding it more. So I think that it's up to the coaches or to the clubs to be in constant communication. Like, these are the things that you're going to see. This is why you're going to see them. We see athleticism as more skillful.
It's an early marker for sure.
100%. And it doesn't mean that that player can't be an incredibly capable player down the road. But we really don't seem to consider that those players who wind up maybe being at the top of the class when it comes, maybe they are not developed to their fullest extent because they haven't had to fail as much. They haven't been put under the type of pressure. And look, this is we're going to veer. We talk about promotion relegation. It's talked about all the time. It's a hot button topic.
Right.
But if each club, let's say, for example, Lou Fuse or St. Louis Scott Gallagher or Mo Rush or Steamers, or they were going to have a semi-pro team or a pro team, let's say USL, USL2, something like that.
That's a great idea.
If we were going to do something like that, especially if we were small budget, grassroots started, every player that comes through is an opportunity to invest in a player who may play for your top team in the future. Clubs all around the world invest in this player. If that investment can be playing for our home team, great. If that investment is, hey, we're gonna be able to go ahead and earn money from this player and fund, our club for years to come. If a player is young, maybe not ready, can we loan them out? Why? To get them experience with a club that we know and trust is going to develop our player, not necessarily to win games. And then, so it benefits everyone to focus on the development of the player. We don't have that. It's much easier to find a kid who's already better.
Right.
And
you can be a consumer as a club of better players and you recruit a better player to make your team better. But is the club or is the coach making the team better with what they have? It's almost as if, wouldn't it be a great idea if you only could play in your own zip code for that club?
I'm not completely sure Noah was going to do hockey before COVID, and for whatever reason, it didn't happen. But we were starting to get familiar with the concept of there was a club that he would go to based on where we lived.
Yeah.
And so I do believe at certain ages, and people can decide, maybe it's before 11v11, if clubs were responsible for the development of players in their region.
Yeah.
I think that's a conversation that would be fun to have. I think it
probably
opens
a lot
up
of fake mailboxes in certain zip codes. Talking about club development, though, you've had a lot of experience and you've evolved too, right? There's things that we both have done in the past that we do differently now.
I think every coach hopefully would say that, right?
Yeah, some I mean, some people coach for 10 years, but only coach one way. Some people coach for 10 years and have, you know, multiple evolutions and they don't do the same thing that they did previously. It's just kind of maybe how interested or motivated you are in learning how to be a coach and learning more about the game, so there's kind of two different coaches. But from a club development point of view, maybe talk a little bit about what we started in the spring and in particular with what is called YDP, Youth Development Program within Steamer's Crew, and talk a little bit about like the thought process behind it and what is your opinion of what you've seen so far?
Yeah, and I'll jump into that. I regarding your comment on sort of coaches evolving, as a coach, as an educator, you're constantly reevaluating yourself. You're constantly critical of yourself. At least I think we are. I can only that's something that I do well, but it's also something that wears me down. And I think a lot of people can relate to that because you try your absolute very best, but you also know that sometimes your very best doesn't measure up to maybe what some people expect or want. But what they don't realize is it never measures up to your own personal goals and aspirations. And what I hope is that we have more coaches who are driven to develop players, that's what keeps them up at night. And part of that is trying to, and this is something that I deal with all the time. The results, of course, I'm emotional about results. I like to win. That's why we do this. So we want to try to do things that help kids get better in an effort to win at a higher and higher level to their capability. And outside of how I feel about the results, the way I always feel is it's always on me. I can evaluate the players objectively, but I go, what can I do better to help them perform at a level that's not dictated by how I tell them to perform? But here's the big one. I worry more about how the adults on the other sideline respond to that result. Because I know in our culture, people are constantly searching for, they don't go watch a training session. They just go, what division is that team in?
Right.
What league is that team in? What tournaments have they played in?
Well, especially a family that might be looking to go somewhere else.
Yes.
That's the first thing that a parent will do is what league, what division, what's their record, and then maybe they'll watch a game, but most likely not. They'll go to the training or the ID session and hope that their kid makes it, but are they really investigating what goes on? It is interesting how there's not a lot of research that goes into it other than the surface level, which is what's the score, what team won, and then you go, well, I want to go on that team. But
what's that team's reputation?
Yeah, but part of the process is teaching people to maybe look a little bit deeper and looking at the style of play and understanding that 7v7 doesn't necessarily correlate to 9v9, which doesn't correlate to 11v11. They do collectively, but individually, a 7v7 team could win a lot of games, but not necessarily be developing to play at 9v9. Field gets bigger, you add 2 more players, all of a sudden you're dipping into your roster, and so things get a little bit more complicated. 11v11 is a lot of times where teams disband because they can't support the full field of 11v11 or having enough subs. But if you were to go back to the 7v7 and if you did it the right way, then you're patient and you look at that player that might be struggling, maybe you have a little bit more patience with them, and by the time you're at 11v11, you have 18 kids. So that's the tough part, is from a parent side who played and then has their child and they're developing and running around, and you go, I'm here for 45 minutes. I want to win. I want to watch my kid win. So the question is, and then we'll go to the YDP thing.
Yeah.
Should a player sit on a higher level team on the bench, or should they play on a lower level team and play a good amount?
You already know my answer. So, no, they have to play. They have to play. I'm not really, I don't have any good reasons behind why a 7, 8, 9-year-old needs to learn how to earn playing time. You want them out there playing with freedom and joy.
Right.
And this is the thing. Everybody pursues a challenge, but why not look for opportunities for the kids to have success? Because the success is what drives them more. We don't see that. As a teacher,
Yeah.
as a coach, I'm telling you, kids, I say this to the kids all the time. If I could open up the trunk of my car and hand out confidence to everybody, I would do it. We can't give it to them, but we can empower them to make mistakes, to try things, to take risks, to really encourage them to try things, to get outside their comfort zone, to catch them being good. Not when it necessarily gets pulled off, but what they try. And as they experience success, they want more of it. And as they fail and learn that nothing changes, I don't need to look over in the sideline. He just said that he liked what I tried there. Or he just said, hey, I loved your thought there, but hey, did you scan? Did you check? Did you prepare your first touch? Did you have an idea? Oh, he's just trying to help me.
Right.
Maybe I'll do that the next time.
Yeah.
It's powerful for kids. It is powerful. But YDP,
Yeah.
you presented that idea to me, and I think you see different clubs, programs handle things a different way. And I think with there being not really a culture of free play, you're bringing kids in, young kids, who aren't incredibly talented on the ball. And when we say talented, it's just natural. It belongs to them. It's a toy to them. The ball comes first, the game second. They're not used to playing a lot of pickup soccer. So their
Right.
first experience, and the first experience they have is with maybe somebody who played in high school. Maybe it's just a mom or dad that offered to take a team,
Right.
and they haven't been a coach, and they don't know what to do. So maybe they just do what they've always done, but they have no experience in developing youth players or knowing necessarily how young kids learn. If you go to a place immersed in a soccer culture, if all these kids can dribble a ball, the coaching can't really have a negative impact because the kids can play, because they have the ball. The ball for a young kid who's not used to it becomes an obstacle. It becomes an impediment to their development. And so that's why we start seeing kids just hammering the ball, hitting
and you hear a coach say, "Get rid of it,
yes,
clear it out, not
Send
through
it.
the middle." Yeah.
yes.
But it's counterintuitive to development.
We are not cherishing the ball. It's an obstacle to make sure we get rid of it in time, to pass the responsibility on to somebody else, that you're not able to solve those problems, because if you make a mistake, it could wind up costing us a game.
Yeah.
We could lose the ball. I mean, most coaching is about minimizing mistakes and minimizing risk, where if you want to find where development lies,
Yeah. It's right there.
it's right on the edge of your comfort zone.
Right.
You don't want a kid to be in an environment where it's so competitive that they learn to become competitive. They will learn grit and resolve and,
U.S. men's national team.
competitive. Yeah.
Who
I mean,
cares?
and-
Everybody's got grit. Everybody's hungry at the top level. That's what it is.
The
But-
USA does not, they definitely don't own the rights to that stuff. That's for
Right.
sure.
But here's the thing. In YDP, when you look out there and we've got 130 30, 40 kids doing very specific progressive activities throughout a 55-minute time period. How is that different? And explain how it's different, like what we do. How is that different than looking maybe somewhere else on a different field at a different location and watching something that might not be as appealing in the development model aspect? Meaning, like, if you go and you watch, there's a line of kids, there's a coach in the middle, there's a goalie, everybody's got a ball, they play the ball to the coach plays it back, they take a shot. So how is what you're talking about different than that? Because they both have a ball, the coach is involved, they're taking shots on goal. It's very direct, it's very specific. But YDP is a little bit different.
It's a lot different.
Mm-hmm.
My question would be, what's the context? Because we're asking the kids to play in an ever-changing, constantly evolving environment with teammates.
Which is the game.
100%. It's the game. Whether it's 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3v3, it's the game. The first thing is the player. It's the player and the ball, that relationship. Without that relationship, it's really difficult. And there's people constantly arguing, is it positional play? Is it soccer starts at home? And my thought would be, it's both. It's both.
Yeah.
You know, I cannot claim this. I think it was Joy the People who I got this from, but it was like play. Learning through play is the most natural form of learning. It's like becoming fluent in a language. You could be in a classroom setting.
Yeah.
Hey, here's the letters. Here's certain words. Here's how we use different tenses. How are you going to really learn to speak that language? You got to be
in
there.
the culture, in the environment. If you're learning German, go to Germany.
Yes, and it's hard. It's really hard at first, but
that's when your senses are so raw and they're just aware of everything around you. That's what YDP is.
Yes.
In a nutshell.
As I've said to you before, how can we? And every time I reevaluate what from one lesson to the next, it's how do we get our kids comfortable with the ball so that they start to cherish it? And then how do we make what we do about the game as much as possible? How often is the ball rolling? How often are they having to have contact with the ball and make decisions in context with defenders, identify space, play with teammates, collaborate,
right,
in a way that is unique to them? See, the thing is, we all have a vision of how we want the game to look, but when the adults try to put that on the kids, it's not organic.
Right.
We have to ask them questions, build in constraints, let them solve problems, and then provide a little guidance. I think what we would find is if we wait longer and have more patience, the picture of the game that they paint often exceeds our own expectations.
So what's a good session look like?
Hey, look, with the younger kids, they want to play. So I think a good session looks like the game. I think that with the young players, we start with arrival games, free play. We started opening it up for the boys that I coach, for the girls that I coach. Hey, 15 minutes before training, fields will be set up. Kids are welcome to arrive and play. Now, when we start our normal start time, there's already 25 to 35 to 40 kids who've been playing the game for 10, 15. Some kids get there early, like I can't set up enough because they just enjoy playing because nobody's telling them what to do.
Right.
They're having fun. Now, if an adult was there, they're going to see everything they do wrong. And if we can flip it, we can see all the amazing learning that's not necessarily, punching in the face obvious. But if you work with children and you spend time and you get to see it evolve, you know it's the type of environment that we cannot fake. It's organic, it's real, and it's about enjoying playing a game. And if a kid enjoys playing a game, there is a likelihood that they're going to keep playing that game.
Right.
And there's a likelihood that they're going to do it more. And we give that kid the chance to reach his or her full potential without comparing them to some other kid, which it's real easy to do, isn't it?
Well, that's the hardest part, is not comparing your child to the next player. And conversely, not comparing your team to another team or another team in a different division. It's really difficult to not do that. It's almost impossible. But at the same time, the closer that you can get to not comparing your child to the next child, the easier it gets for you. Because if you're just wanting and learning and watching and observing your own child and letting them do their own thing, you're providing a pretty good safe space for your child, which I think is overlooked. And I overlooked it as a parent going through it a lot of times.
But I know personally that you were open to looking at that and you and I had many conversations about that, and you were willing to take a hard look at yourself, to look in the mirror, and because you wanted to do the right thing for your kids. You were passionate about that. And it's exciting when you meet people that are willing to re-examine the way they think things are. And it doesn't mean that they're going to change, but at least they're willing to take a step back and go, okay, am I doing, this is what I want. Are all the things that I'm doing giving that the best chance to happen? And when parents realize the effect that you have on your kid, it's not as much as we think it is unless we step away, be supportive, do our research, and find a coach, an organization that we can trust and believe in. And then hold them accountable.
Is it from a parent's perspective, is it practicing humbleness?
Ooh.
And let me maybe expand on that. You go as a parent on the sideline, you're there with, we're both dads. So you're there with other dads, and your child isn't doing well as the other kids. So it seems and feels like it's a direct reflection.
Right.
So when you're in that space and in that moment, you lash out at your child. And then you go, I don't know, wake up. What are you doing out there? Hurry up, speed up. You say all of these action words that don't really help the situation. But if we practiced a little bit more humbleness as a parent and allowed for it to just expand on its own, which is difficult, but it is the right thing to do. And that is the hardest part of it. Because if it was easy, it would be so well known and everybody would be doing it. And it's just not. It is the hardest thing to do as a parent, is practice humbleness, not speak your mind every time that there's a problem, trying not to take down the barriers that are set up in front of your child and trying to make it easier for them. All you're doing is delaying their own personal development, and you're taking it on. And it's like if your child takes a test, but you are at home with them and you answer it for them, well, you get the A. They don't. Like they're not developing. And that's the hardest part. And I see it all the time. I think between the two of us, we have like 16 plus teams that we both coach. So we see a lot of parents. We see a lot of personalities. And it is the hardest thing to do, because even you go, look, parents, there's no need to say anything on the field. And they can't help it. They just want to guide their child because they don't want their child to be the one reason that the team got scored on. Or maybe their child wasn't at the back post and they didn't score the goal, or maybe the child should have played it with their left foot and instead they decided to use their dominant foot. All of these things happen. Thousands of these scenarios happen in a game, and parents are so wrapped up in it all.
Yes.
And that it hurts as a parent to see failure.
Walk through a tournament going on.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy town. It's crazy town because there's so much money involved from whatever it is for playing on a team. It's expensive. It's expensive all the way through. If it's a travel tournament, it's the hotel, it's the food, it's being in a room with the whole family and you've got multiple kids and one bathroom and everybody's stuff is everywhere. It's anxiety ridden.
Yeah.
And where do you lash out? At the game. You stay up late at the hotel pool and you're drinking and you're talking about the games that you won or lost and what the next team is doing. And they only won by 2 goals and you won by 3. Yep. You should win the early morning game. You guys should be going through. It is wild. So practicing that humbleness kind of goes back to the same statement as a parent and enjoying your child.
I think finding the ability to truly enjoy watching your child play is a gift. It's something that you constantly have to work on. I am absolutely certain that I became a better coach when I had children. And I became a much better coach when I started coaching my own children. I've always, and I hope that you agree with this, I've always cared
too much.
Yes. and I care too much what people think too. My wife would tell you that. And it's a huge flaw for me. Cause I'll take it home. And I want to be a better father and a better husband. But I'm a coach. There's no place I'd rather be than on a field with a group of kids who are excited to be there and who think that I believe in them, who know I believe in them, and that they don't have to perform to earn my praise or affection. Right. Now, I do think
there's a standard.
There's a standard of, first, do you really want to be here? Do you enjoy playing? And I think that's a conversation that needs to happen more often. And I encourage my parents to have those conversations with their kids all the time. We expect you to give your best, to try your best, and your best each day can fluctuate.
Right. It can fluctuate within an hour. Yeah. Right?
It absolutely can. But I think you would agree, we all, like, the toughest people in your children's lives are usually the parents.
Yeah.
And they mean well, and they want the best for their kids. And coaches, if we're doing it the right way, we play a similar role. And that's why I'll tell parents, let me challenge them.
Yeah.
That's why you brought them. Let me challenge them. You support them. You love them. Now, you can set expectations. Look, Charlotte, my 10-year-old, I think 2 years ago, doing some stuff with the St. Gabe's kids, just trying to introduce the game to them in a different way. She's picking flowers, with a friend. And I'm like, I go over and what's going on? And of course I'm frustrated because, this is my daughter and I'm doing this.
And you're supposed to be the guy. And it's
in this moment, I'm the guy.
Yeah.
So I'm the guy.
Yeah.
So she's like, Daddy, I don't think this is my thing. And I said, and I can remember I said, that's okay. I said, listen, what if we just try to have fun for the next 2 weeks and then I'll help you find your thing. And if the next thing's not the thing, guess what we'll do? She's like, find the next thing. I'm like, we'll find the next thing. And I said, I want you to enjoy what you do. Because if you don't, then you're not going to want to do it. 2 years later, she can't wait. She can't wait to get in the car. She can't wait to go.
Isn't that quite the journey?
Oh, because I'll say to her, I'll say to both my kids that are playing right now, I got a future to be named later here. We'll see. And I'll say to them, look, I can't lie to you. Of course, I want you to love this because I love to spend time with you doing something that I love to do. I love to share that with you. But the worst possible scenario for me is for you to be doing something because you think that's what I want you to do.
That is the toughest part.
Oof.
And as a parent, you're introducing the game because it's something that you enjoyed. And like, I felt like it was a great opportunity in the beginning to give my wife a break, take all 4 kids, all go to training, 2 hours, bam. And then it was like my way to communicate with my own kids in the backyard. Again, opportunity to just detach them from her so that she could, go grocery shopping or do something in the house that was needed. And, as a parent, that was my way to communicate with my kids. Now, I also attacked them, right? Because I wasn't prepared as a parent to handle the early stages of going through the development journey.
Yeah.
And, it's like, I can remember maybe the first or second game that Haley played in as a little kindergartner, first grader. And, the game is on one field and she's sitting on her soccer ball looking at the other field. And that like, I couldn't believe it that she would be doing that, but yet she has no reference. She has no idea, but I took it as she wasn't paying attention. She was just observing what was around her. She'd never been to a soccer game before. And I get to that now, 17-ish years later, and parents go, I just wish I could get their, they want their child to be more aggressive. And I go, they're 6, they're 5. Like there's so much time for that. Why not just be happy that they're not pulling at your pant leg and they're on the field? Who cares what they're doing? I wish I would have had that same perspective a long time ago. I did it the long way and the hard way because I had to experience it and live through it. And then I go, ugh, I need to be better. I need to learn more. I need to have continuous learning. I can't stop.
Right. Well, it's hard for parents. I think it's hard for coaches when they realize that we actually can't make them better.
Right.
We can create an environment. This is what really good coaches do, is they create an environment, and then that environment will bring out the qualities in the players. The games will ask the questions. We help. We give them some context. We support them. We encourage them. We challenge them. It's alchemy. There's no exact, playbook, and because it all revolves around our own personalities, and I would tell coaches, hey, you have to be who you are, the authentic version of yourself, but you have to understand that kids aren't committed at the age of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good athletes are being pulled in many different directions. And who am I to say soccer is going to be needs to be the reason why you can't do any of that other stuff? You can't miss any practices here. Well, I would be frustrated with another coach saying that.
Yeah, right.
Because I want them to ultimately come to their own decisions, but to understand that, hey, if we put a great training environment together, that you'll have parents going, hey, if they're not there on Tuesday, they're going to miss anything. And I'll be like, well, why would you want me to be their coach if they weren't going to miss anything? They're going to get better on Tuesday night. I'm not going to make them better, but they're going to get better by taking advantage of the environment.
In the environment, though, listen, and again, what we do on Mondays and Wednesdays, that environment,
I think is create the environment.
That is kind of the petri dish of teaching players. Like I was watching it last night with the one group that you were leading, and it was like, all right, everybody, let's get a couple of kids over here and 2 over here, and you're setting them up, and do it quick. It's setting an expectation, and kids want to be in that environment. They may not show it because they'll walk. If you allow them to walk, they'll walk. But if you ask them to move into the next spot on the jog with a little bit pep in their step, they will do it because they want to be in an environment that they feel like they're being encouraged and led and motivated.
That
And-
things are expected of them.
And things are expected of
Yes.
them. And that's where they kind of grow exponentially. So like when we started week 1, session 1, now we just finished session 9.
9, right?
So now we're looking at all of these different scenarios that you're throwing out there. So with 1v1, 2v1, being comfortable on the ball, adding layers into every training session so that one builds onto the next one to the next one. And then, at some point you can look back and there's a trail, there's a history, and you can even look forward. You can see where it's going. So what is it that drives you personally to have all of this road mapping, looking in the rearview mirror and then looking in the windshield, and you're kind of in that vehicle of soccer development? What's motivating you, and what makes you come up with a great training session? How do you do it? What's it take? Because you and I, we talk about this. It takes a lot
It
of
does.
energy, and it's emotional energy. It's
And
not,
and the time to prepare them,
it's not easy.
because I spend most of the time trying to go, what do we ultimately want to accomplish, and how can we do it within the game as much as possible so that they feel like, oh, not that I had a practice, but I played soccer tonight. And so, you ask, I'm an educator first. I'm very self-critical. I really want people to be happy. I want parents to know that I really care about their kids. At the same time, I want to win as well. It's very hard back and forth within me. I have a desire to want to develop the player that nobody would take,
Yeah.
but I also have a strong desire to coach a team that could play at the highest level, beyond what we think, beyond the winning, the way they play. And I know it all starts in the same place. Do they love the ball? Is the ball something that they absolutely cherish? Do they play freely? Have they developed a fluency in the language of play? And then how can we create an environment where kids want to be there with other kids because they're excited to do the same things? And so, and then you just follow where they will lead you. And that is, I say alchemy sometimes maybe it's artistry. That's something only experience can do.
Right.
And that's the one thing I can say. I have so many different experiences at so many different levels: girls, boys, high school, college, different clubs, been able to, coach groups that have been number 1 in the nation in high school in Florida, had a group that was fortunate to win a national championship, a group that I worked with for a long time. I mean, I've gone through some challenges, some things that hurt me deeply, because there's never a moment for me where I'm really, to be honest, I'm not thinking about me. That's the job of the coach. And it's really hard because you wear it, you feel it.
Right.
Okay. And it could be, I worry about what people think. Like two of my boys' teams this weekend took it on the chin. I think it was 7-2 and 5-0.
Well, I would take a 7-2 loss sometimes.
And I think the me 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I'm jumping in. I'm trying to fix it. I'm trying to make it better. And I'm like, I made a commitment to myself. We've said this 3 or 4 times. The right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
You do the research. You educate yourself. You figure out what you think the right thing to do is. Then you hopefully have the guts to do it. And then you have to be transparent
Right.
with parents and understand that many of them, usually the best athletes
Yep.
who, It's just generally easier for them. You try to convince them that if they trust you, that it will pay off for their child in the long haul. And, Steamer's a small club. There's more small clubs than there are big clubs, and they face myriad challenges. We have to be the type of club that is willing to tell a kid, hey, we love you. You've been amazing. There may be an opportunity out there for you that we can't give you at this time.
Right.
And then go be super happy for them.
Celebrate it.
And I do think that people, they try to get where they ultimately want to go way too early. Development doesn't happen like that.
Yeah. So talk about that. Talk about leaving too soon and how to know if leaving too soon is what you're getting ready to do. Is it based on the environment, the coach, the direction of the team? Is there good coaching? Is there bad coaching? Like, this is probably two parts. It's probably from a coach's perspective, but then as a parent, how do you know if it's too soon? Because the fear of missing out, you could be told, well, if you don't come this year, we probably won't have space next year. That's garbage. So as a parent, how do you handle, do you leave now or do you stay, and why? Why do you stay? Why do you leave? Most of the time, parents will leave because of an influential friend is already at another club, another team, and it would be great if we could travel together.
Or somebody else has decided to move.
Yeah.
Hey, why don't you come with us?
Right.
And that's logical.
Yeah.
Those are the people that you talk to, you're friends with. Maybe there's carpooling. What people, I think, sometimes forget to sort of register is the player that's leaving this environment is somehow good enough to play at this higher level.
Yeah.
How did they become good enough to play at that higher level? And what is it that you identified that made you believe that development process that's been taking place there is not going to continue?
Yeah.
You and I have talked about it. I'm like, it should be no problem seeing a girl play with boys in a game.
Yeah.
They don't know any better. We condition them to think that way. Young players playing up, like in a small club, okay? If they're good enough,
right,
and they're not sacrificing what makes them good and the process, the things that will help them continue to develop.
Well, talk about that though.
Well,
what are they sacrificing? Explain it in a example on the field.
Well, Freddie Adu is a big one. They put him out there at 14.
Yeah.
DC United. And he was as publicity-wise, he was as celebrated a player as we had seen. And they put so much on him. And when they put him in, and who knows, he struggled to be the him that people were so excited about. And, just look, everybody has a different opinion, but things were maybe asked of him at an age where he wasn't able to necessarily continue to be the version of himself that people were so excited to see. Now he did, he did wind up having, a decently successful career, but
not to the magnitude of what he was being projected. And where I would maybe even say, like, you have a younger child that's playing up.
Yes.
Two things happen. One is they play up, and if they're, at the top end of athleticism, they can be pretty successful just because of athleticism.
Yes.
The second that they play against a superior athletic team, the first thing that they do is revert back to like an afraid mentality. So get rid of it. As soon as the ball comes to me, get rid of it. If I'm under pressure, kick it out of bounds. How many times do you see that? two kids running down the sideline, kid just taps it out of bounds, it's turnover, other team throws it in. Those are the moments that I think you're sacrificing development. And so that younger child who's playing up should no longer play up. Something has changed. They need to go back into an environment where they can continue to develop. The other part of it is the parent who plays their child up has made that decision to play them up. Playing up is also a crutch because if they're not doing well, they're playing up a year. So
they're the youngest.
They're the youngest. And you use that as a reason as to why they're not performing. And again, it's a detriment to the child. And that's the toughest part to recognize in the moment. It's easy to say it post. It's easy to say it and predicting it like what we're talking right now. It's, we're not even naming names. We're just talking.
Yeah.
But you can literally see it.
Well, I think
in the moment, it's hard.
Clubs can do it because the player is the focal point, not the team. And so a club who's looking out for that player can put them in environments where there's, again, I'll keep coming back to, you want challenge, absolutely want challenge, but there has to be an opportunity for them to have success as well. And then in a club, let's say you have, for example, 3 top teams in an age group in a club. How often do you see those teams playing the exact same style, the exact same way,
training
coaching
with
the
each
same way?
other? Like zero. It's 0%.
I will not say 0 because I don't know, but think about Steamers. How many small clubs do that? For sure. I don't know of any, and it doesn't mean that they don't exist. And I mentioned this to you, and I've mentioned this to others. Many clubs are multiple clubs within the club.
Yeah.
There's the ECNL part of the club or the Girls Academy part of the club. And then there's the other part of the club.
Yeah.
And then there's, the MLS Next part of the club and the other part of the club. There's so many leagues now.
E64 you name it. It doesn't matter. It's even in for Steamers Crew, there's clubs within the club because you have all the premier teams, all the championship teams, Division I, even in talking about our club, it's something that we're working on.
Yes.
And we're trying to break down some of those barriers. So for example, at YDP, what happens? Kids show up, they go on a field. We're not designating specific fields for Coach A. We're saying you showed up 15 minutes early, play against a kid that's 2 years older than you or younger and just play.
Yes.
Because that's what happens in Brazil. Kids show up, they're playing against adults because that's how they're learning to play the game. That's why they're superior. So I feel like we're opening the first book for our club and breaking down those barriers between coaches, between players, the top premier level players, maybe on the same field during YDP as a Division IV player. And there is a bit of humbleness in both scenarios because the Division IV player would never expect a premier level player to be on the same field training and vice versa. But if we're providing that, it seems to be a pretty good environment for development itself. And every club will say they're developing players. But I also think people say that as a catchphrase, but what are they actually doing?
Well, which players get developed?
Yeah. So is it
Which players are we developing?
It's usually the top team.
Look, I've been a math chair for middle schools for a long time. And, one of the things that we constantly talk about, do you group them? And there's lots of people talk about, differentiation and things like that. And what has typically happened and still typically happens is if you group them, the higher achieving class tends to, not always, but tends to get the more qualified teacher.
Yeah.
And, the running joke would be, hey, Coach Smith will coach this this class, and they only occasionally will throw a stapler, or
Yeah.
something like that.
Right.
And this gap that maybe was there for any number of reasons gets stretched immensely. Something that I truly believe, the more that I read about it, the more that I see it. Some of the best players, they come out of an environment where they struggled the most, where they weren't the biggest, they weren't the fastest, they weren't the strongest. They had to learn to play with great intelligence. They had to play with great awareness. Their ability to keep the ball close, make decisions, move in intelligent ways, find and exploit space. As they grew, as they matured physically, emotionally, all those good things, they have an ability to do things that maybe somebody that didn't have those challenges. And look, it's not an absolute. But what tends to happen is the best, most mature, precocious get a different coach with a different type of training. And what if all the players had access to similar training, to the similar environment? We play the same way.
Right.
There's a better chance. I don't know who says it, but it's as many as possible, as long as possible, as well as possible. That is a incredibly daunting challenge for a club.
And we're taking a run at it with YDP because all of the kids are all together. All of the coaches are all together. And instead of teams being siloed off in different sections of the field, they're all together. The only thing that we do separate is the girls and the boys.
Yes.
But I don't even know why we really do that.
But we've talked a lot about free play, right?
Yeah.
And it's something that I really would love to see any club take a lead on. But we've talked about Steamers, and that's been something that we've been excited about. And in that situation, I think that's a really good launching point for sort of bridging that gap, because isn't it sort of cultural? You know what I mean? Like, we have a girl that trains with the boys. She comes out, trains with my boys. Maybe the first one or two times, it's a nuanced thing. Now it's nothing.
Right.
It's just somebody that loves to play, that can play, and it doesn't matter. But it takes some time. You know what I mean? So, man, I come back to every time that trying to get it right is elusive. You're constantly going for it. You're constantly reevaluating. Do we have the flexibility and the humility to know when we could get it better and then make it better? And I think you have to constantly be in that evaluation process.
So when you're looking at YDP and it serves a purpose up to a certain age.
Yes.
We've also talked about adding in a YDP plus, which is less players, bigger training session landscape.
Spaces.
Yeah, space. It could be a little different.
Yes.
It could also offer up a unique set of challenges that we haven't had necessarily with YDP. But I do feel like the first 9 sessions have been really good. And I think that what it does is it takes the bottom player and gives them the same training as the top player. It gives the top player a better structured environment, and they can continue to learn, because even the best player can play against a less developed player if you ask them to do things that maybe put constraints on them and focus on some of their weaknesses. And that's what you can get in a group environment like this, which I think is unique. It's certainly something that we're trying to evolve it and study it and understand it. We talk a lot about what the next session should look like, what should be the focus and the purpose of each session. Like last night was, lots of 1v1, and I loved it. And it reminded me of my kids when they were little. What I loved last night was putting the defender at a little bit less advantage because defenders are at the advantage. They don't have the ball. But giving them a ball, it literally freezes defenders. And I loved watching it last night from the first, transaction to
how we progressed.
And within that same activity, the defenders were then using the ball, whereas they weren't in the first, go around. And the second time they did it, they were getting more comfortable. That to me is a development-centered approach and kind of neutralizing some of the players that were a little bit bigger, stronger, faster. You give them a ball, all of a sudden freeze tag, they're not as agile. They have a ball. I loved all of that. For the parents that were watching or even listening, because, it's got a speaker and I know parents are listening. We have a pretty steady flow of adults listening and watching and observing. What's the message to the parents who are sitting there saying, am I in the right place? How do they know? Are they watching their kid and watching them have fun? Or do they have just that internal clock that says, well, I'm in the right space. This is good. I'm enjoying watching my kid. How's a parent supposed to know that they're in the right space?
Listen to their child, watch their child, educate themselves, which is something that we've talked a lot about. Everything that we do, we send out what we're going to do.
I love that, by the way.
Well, I mean, it's being transparent, not just for the coaches, but for the parents. They want to come see what's happening. And then there might be a point where they go, okay, we've seen it enough. We now know, hey, we can just drop our kids off and go run some errands because, initially parents may get enamored with cones and lines and sort of authoritative, things look neat
Structured,
and clean.
yeah.
But the game is far from neat and clean. And in order to get to where you want it to look, man, you've got to go through a lot. And look, the landscape is such that you rarely worry about, let's rephrase it, the players, the teams that are having the most success are always the ones that are in flux. That it's just sewn into the culture, leagues and we want to compete at a higher level or we need more players. And, as we start to do this, this really is a first attempt at this. And, you'll say something like, oh, it went great and whatever. And I'm rarely of that mindset because I'm always like, what could we have done better? How could we have made it better for the kids? How can we make it better for the coaches? How can we put out more information to the parents? But yet I see that it's gradually getting better. The free play at the beginning, there's more kids.
Right.
There's less balls flying and less kids falling on the ground. When they're playing with the ball, it's getting better. It's easier to flow. They go, when we transition, the transition's getting better. And the engagement from the coaches is getting better. Plus you have the STL City 2 guy. You have the STL City guys out there. You have the SLU players out there. And they're, as I told you before, they're the best thing that could happen because kids get to look at them and go, oh,
right.
I can see somebody that I might like to be like one day.
It's difficult for the kids to understand how hard it is to get to the spot that those other,
and that's where
early adults are. Yeah. Like they see them, but they don't realize what it takes to get to that spot. And maybe even the coaches and the parents don't really understand it either. Can you play too much? Can you, as a kid, play too much? Is there a limit? How many games should you be playing?
See, I think
how many nights of training? What's the sweet spot?
I think when you define play, is it organized play? Like the play that I'm talking about is unstructured play. Play where it's like, come out and play if you want to play. Like growing up, I mean, did you go outside all the time?
Right.
I mean, and maybe it wasn't playing soccer. It was playing football.
Could be anything,
touch football in the street or, a game in the front yard, tearing the yard up, worrying about when my dad got home to see what happened to the yard, hide and seek, or, riding my bike down to the neighborhood park to go play basketball. in a culture, what it's changed. So the free play aspect, because of safety reasons, because of so much organized and structured sports, and so many things are accessible to everybody, it's hard to know what to do. You can't make them like it. What you can do is create an environment and let them fall in love with it, but accept the fact that maybe some won't. So we as coaches we have this additional responsibility to bring the game to the kids in a way that's never happened before. And you said it before, and I never answered it. I do think in some ways we have to go back and start from the very beginning, which is kid and a ball,
Yeah.
players. It's hard because a 12-year-old who isn't great with the ball, what is the difference between that 12-year-old and a 6-year-old who isn't great with the ball? Well, the 12-year-old just starts to assume they're not good with it, or
Mhm.
their version of good is not reflective of, the standards that the game brings.
Yeah.
So you ask me all the time, and then I flipped it on you the other day, and I said, if you could only pick a few things that you absolutely were sewn into the fabric of your club, what would those things be? And we started with parent education. Soccer starts at home. Understanding that a kid can fall in love with a ball as it's supported by the relationship with the parents.
Yeah.
Not kicking the ball as far as you can, but just having balls around the house, playing with it, hitting the
Right.
ball off of a wall, playing a little game with their parents.
Yeah. You don't even need to be a soccer player in
No.
order to participate and spend time with your child. And that's kind of like in a different program that we have called Edge.
Yeah.
We've created, that introduction to the game
And to
with the
movement.
parent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's more about just relational aspect of having a ball at your foot, using it at home. We send a video out, we show a different activity every week, and the parents can choose to get involved or choose not to. But the ones that do choose to be involved with their child, they're spending quality time being active, not on your phone, not having your kid not on their tablet or whatever it is. And there just seems to be something really good about that.
And it's not about a parent pushing their child to do things that they
No,
want
it's
them to
about
do,
spending time with your child.
and introducing the ball as a toy.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've messaged Tom Byer.
Yeah.
I mean, so he would tell us if he was on this podcast, it's the most important thing. Kids entering into the game to start playing the game already comfortable with the ball at their feet, because the ball no longer becomes the obstacle to their success,
Right.
or it doesn't become something that they kick. So, I mean, it was ball mastery, just teaching them the ability that they can have on the ball that's not tied into how big, strong, fast they are. So those two are connected. Free play. And we're going to be talking about how do we engage the community,
Yeah.
all the players, the parents, friends, come play. And if the truth is, if that's not something that you think is fun, what is Select Soccer for? You know what I mean? Hopefully the first thing is the joy comes first,
Yeah.
because after that, so many things can happen. And then you fall in love with the work, and then you develop a passion. Then it's, you understand the grind. I think that starts way too soon.
Yeah.
And you and I both know, because we've been there from the beginning of certain age groups. We know how it goes. It's
Yeah.
hard for people if they haven't seen it, if they haven't experienced it. How do they know?
Right.
They take my word for it, or that's why I said early on, you have to believe and trust. And maybe it's a club. And the truth is, if you as a parent feel responsible for doing the best you can for your kid, and I would not fault anybody for doing that, and we don't have to agree on that course of action. All we can do is educate them, give them an honest opinion, and try to present opportunities to them. And then if it doesn't work out, or they choose something different, we cheer for their kid and wish them the best. And there's a lot of animosity and emotions sometimes that come
Yeah.
up in youth sports, not just soccer, obviously, but
But that is natural
yeah,
to go through that and to progress through it. And what bothers you today in 4 years won't
Yeah.
even register on your radar.
it's
And
it's
that's
hard to know
what's-
that though.
Yeah, it's impossible actually. But here's the thing. We've discussed so much today and have had a great dialogue. And I think it can continue to multiple different layers within all of this sport because the soccer is so huge. There's so many different pathways and experiences that you can have as a family. And it does provide a lot of benefits. It does provide togetherness. It does provide for the child to be responsible, to know what it means to be on a team, to know what it takes to be a better version of themselves. All of that being said, and you've been in it for a long time, where does this lead for you? Like, what do you want it to be for you as a lasting legacy? Have you ever thought of that before? Like,
I think about it all the time. And I feel bad for thinking about it, to think that I could have a legacy or that it's hard because when you have strong opinions, when you're passionate about something, sometimes people can think that you think you know everything. The reality is, I don't think I know anything. I'm constantly trying to figure out what I'm getting wrong. What could I do better? Okay. For my players, for my parents, understanding that it's okay to judge me. You should judge me, but I'm hoping you're judging me on the things that I am trying to share with you. I do understand that it's a results business down the road, but I do know that making it about results at the young age, look, the results are a byproduct. And the truth is, we can get results early by prioritizing getting better athletes, prioritizing minimizing mistakes, and using the physical qualities and a style of play that forces the other team to make mistakes and then
Right.
capitalize on them and then
Yeah.
minimize mistakes on your end. I also know and feel strongly that the best environment for a player to develop is an environment where they're constantly on the edge,
right.
but not on the edge in terms of pressure from the outside, on the edge by the pressure of the game. Can they experience pure joy of competition at the highest level to which they can still have some success?
Right.
Plenty of challenges because some kids, parents can't, too many kids are excited to be on a roster, in a team picture.
Right.
Go to the next team and say, how can I play? You don't get better not playing.
Right.
So, but to suggest that I have something that's more important to say than anybody else makes me uneasy, makes me uncomfortable. But what I hope that would tell somebody else is that I think very carefully about it, that I don't just, it's not an emotional reaction. It's something that their thoughts and ideas developed over 25 plus years.
You do spend a lot of time making decisions, and they don't happen in a vacuum, and they certainly aren't just quick whipped.
Right.
I'm probably the opposite. I probably make faster decisions, but that's different personalities. But I do love the energy, the passion, and the excitement that you bring to every training session. I do feel like you have a certain way about leading.
But
and-
I'm nervous when I get up in front of a bunch of
but
people.
what's just
I don't-
bizarre to me, like that, it doesn't even
Because I
make
don't ever want it to be about me. That's how I've always been. And at the same time, you put me in a room full of kids, put me on a field with kids, I couldn't be happier,
Yeah,
so legacy wise, what I hope is that I can impact kids who maybe would have been overlooked,
yeah,
I hope that somebody 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road can look back and say, he asked for my best. He gave me his best.
Right.
And I hope that the parents can look and say, look, agree with him, don't agree with him, like him, don't like him. You always know where he stands. And you know that he's trying his very best for you.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's how I want to be treated in life. Like, I try to be transparent. I sometimes think some people take simple and try to make it more complex and complicated. And I am on a never-ending journey to take all these rattling thoughts in my head
Yeah.
and simplify them in a way that's easier for people to digest.
Well, and it's funny because that was what we started with is, are we overcomplicating this whole process?
Yeah.
And if the parents that are listening, if they take anything away, I certainly hope that they pick and choose what they want to buy into and what they want to listen to. But this is a critical and an important message, and we'll continue to build on it because I think it's important. This isn't just a one-time deal. There should be, weekly discussions that are broadcasted out, whether it's just in the club or if other parents and other clubs are listening. It really doesn't matter because it's important. It's important even for your toughest competition, and you don't want to lose, but this is what is important to kids. It's important to parents. It's important to just society and culture. And I hope that we're making a little bit of an impact. So if you're a parent and you're listening, I hope you take what we've said and you understand that this is coming from a good intention. And what is likely to be the most difficult part of all of this is what we just talked about. But we'll keep talking. So I appreciate you, Mike.
Well, I told you, all you have to do is ask the question, and the hard part will be turning me off. So
thank you so much.
No, hey,
Appreciate
thanks
you.
for your time. I appreciate it.
I'm really glad you joined us today on The Goalpost. Raising and supporting young players isn't always easy, but choosing to focus on their growth, their joy, and their character, now that's the right thing to do. You might not see the results right away, but every small moment you invest makes a big difference in your child's life. And remember, all development, all the time. That's not just a motto, it's a promise. We'll be here next time cheering with you.